the shadow frequency, where the veil between this world and the next grows thin, and the things that whisper in the dark are given voice. From the cryptic candlelit studios, deep in the Indiana forests, your host, Matt Wilson, and his spectral producer, Juniper Ravenwood, unearth the forbidden, the forgotten, and the fearsome. So, still your heart, dim the light, and listen closely. For once you tune into the shadow frequency, you may never tune out.
Good evening, and welcome back to the Shadow Frequency. I'm Juniper, and tonight the studio feels a little quieter than usual. The kind of quiet that makes you notice every tiny creak in the walls and every little shift in the air. It's late, the lights are low, and there's that odd feeling again, like something in the room has been listening longer than we have. Mounted just off to my left, watching all of us with the patience of something far older than patience itself, is the Oracle of Nineveh. Dark stone, hammered bronze, hollow eyes worn smooth by centuries no one can account for. The carved edges still catch the light in all the wrong ways, and the old cuneiform marks around the face look less like decoration and more like instructions no one alive was meant to read. It's half ritual mask, half funerary plaque, and entirely unpleasant to meet head-on in a dark room. Matt, I'm going to ask you directly tonight, what kind of case are we pulling from the dark?
Well, let's go cryptid tonight, June. Something out in the wild, something that maybe shouldn't be there.
Cryptid, all right, that feels specific enough to be dangerous. Let us wake the old thing. Oracle of Nineveh, we're looking for a beast story tonight, something that moved through the modern world and still left people sounding like villagers around a fire.
Again you disturb the long dark for another of your little inquiries. I had descended into excellent silence, Juniper. I had no intention of returning, merely because the mammals wished to discuss hairy enigmas.
And yet, here you are.
Because you are incapable of leaving buried things buried. Speak plainly. What shape of nuisance does the host desire?
Well, Matt is asking for a cryptid case, something real enough to unsettle people, strange enough to survive, and local enough that it still feels like it's hiding in the hedgerows.
I sift the dead frequencies and pass between the stars and the broken archive. Do not interrupt the reckoning.
I wasn't going to.
You were thinking about it.
Now that's fair.
I search the sealed corridors of memory, the wet hills, the old road, the place where the trees were bitten and the livestock trembled. Ah, a thread has risen, not noble, not grand, merely effective. The sort of terror mortals make stronger by glancing twice into the dark.
And what have you found?
A slope above a bath, a summer unease, bark torn from living wood, a witness who spoke not of certainty, but of dread. The name resting in the dust is this, the Beast of Brassknocker Hill.
That one does feel worthy of disturbance.
Worthy enough, though I note with some disappointment that you continue using ancient consultation for podcast programming.
And yet your hit rate remains excellent.
Praise from broadcasters. How low the ages have carried me.
Oh, back to sleep with you then.
Gladly. Wake me only when your species improves.
Good Lord, and just like that, the room goes still again. Ha! What an attitude. So tonight's case is the Beast of Brassknocker Hill, a strange 1979 flap in the countryside just south of Bath, around Brassknocker Hill and nearby at Moncton Combe, where residents began reporting a growing sense that something was out there. Trees damaged high above the ground, animals acting spooked, a sudden dead hush in the woods, and a later sighting of a small bear-like creature with pale rings around its eyes. It's one of those cases where the evidence is thin, the atmosphere is thick, and the folklore starts forming almost immediately. Matt, you picked Cryptid tonight. What grabs you about this one?
Honestly, it's how modern it feels. This isn't some medieval bestiary thing. This is 1979. Named places, named people, a community that suddenly starts looking at the same patch of countryside differently. That's the stuff that gets under my skin.
Yeah, that's the part I love too, the idea that a place can change without moving an inch. Chris, what about you?
It's the animals bit for me. You hear that, and your brain immediately goes somewhere primal.
Nah.
If the birds vanish, if livestock are jumpy, if the woods go wrong before people can explain why, that's a very nasty foundation for a story.
It is. You can explain a lot of things, but it's hard to explain away a whole atmosphere once it settles in. Matt, the record is yours.
You are tuned to the Shadow Frequency, where every whisper tells a story from beyond the veil. Hosted by Matt Wilson. Produced by Juniper Ravenwood. With Chris Beach. The darkness continues.
Thanks, June, and thanks for putting up with the sarcastic idol there to get this one. Because this is exactly the kind of case I love, half newspaper clipping, half local dread, and all the more effective because it happened in a real place you can still point to on a map. Brassknocker Hill sits on Claverton Down, above the village of Monkton Combe, just south of Bath, and it already sounds like a location somebody would invent for a ghost story if it didn't actually exist. It's hill country, wooded edges, lanes, hedgerows, quiet pockets where sound travels strangely, and where the land can feel older than the calendar says it is. And in the summer of 1979, that ordinary English countryside began to feel, at least to the people living there, like it was sharing itself with something else. The first part of this case doesn't begin with some clean spotlight sighting. It begins with damage. Ron and Betty Harper, living at Sun House Cottage on Brassknocker Hill, noticed something had been stripping bark from an oak tree on their property. Now, bark damage in the countryside is not unusual by itself, but this was wrong in scale and wrong in pattern. Later summaries of the case say the bark had been stripped from branches as high as 20 feet up, and the marks were described as far too large to be from squirrels. Their goat was said to be badly frightened. And maybe the creepiest detail of the lot, the woods seemed to go dead. Birds gone quiet. The place feeling emptied out before anybody had a proper explanation for why. That's where the mood of this case really begins. Not with a monster clearly seen, but with the sense that the environment itself had started recoiling from something no one could quite name. And that's what makes Brassknocker Hill so effective. You can almost feel the sequence in reverse. First, people notice the land feels off, and then they start looking harder. Then every snapped twig matters, every patch of silence matters, every animal reaction matters. In the file here, I've got a photocopied clipping summarizing the case, and I'm holding it up now. It's one of those plain, almost clinical write-ups that somehow makes the whole thing worse. It mentions the goat being frightened. It mentions bark stripped from high branches. It mentions tooth marks estimated at 10 to 20 times the size of a squirrel's. That's the kind of detail that sticks in the mind because it doesn't sound theatrical. It sounds like somebody trying maybe a little shakily to describe physical evidence that didn't fit what they were used to seeing in those woods. By the 1st of August, the count in later retellings had climbed to 50 stripped trees. At that point, you're not just talking about one unsettling morning in a garden. You're talking about an area beginning to feel hunted. Then came the sighting that gave the fear a shape, or at least something close to one. A man driving through nearby Monkton Combe at night reportedly saw an animal around 3 to 4 feet tall, described as bear-like, with bright white rings around its eyes, an image so odd it barely sounds like it belongs in Somerset at all. That detail, those pale circles around the eyes, is what gives the case its hook, because if all we had was something in the dark, in the road, you could shrug it off. But white rings around the eyes, that lodges in the brain. It makes the creature sound not just unusual, but wrong. Not a clean fit for dog, fox, badger, or anything else people there know on sight. And now the story had moved from damaged trees and frightened livestock into witness testimony. Still brief, still slippery, but suddenly personal, suddenly visual, and suddenly much harder for locals to stop replaying when the darkness fell over the hill again. What I keep coming back to in this first half is the way fear works when it gets tied to landscape. Brassknocker Hill wasn't suddenly somewhere else. The roads were the same, the houses were the same, the slope above Bath was still the slope above Bath. But once enough strange details gather, the stripped wood, the vanished birds, the nervous animal, the road encounter, people stop seeing the place as neutral. It starts to feel inhabited by intent. And when that happens, every ordinary shadow on a hedgerow becomes a possible continuation of the story. You can imagine curtains twitching at night. You can imagine people listening before stepping outside. You can imagine that awful moment where a sound from the trees is only a sound from the trees, unless it isn't. And that, to me, is where the beast really begins to live. Not just in the woods, but in the change it causes in the people watching them from the dark. Sometimes the worst thing a place can do is stay almost normal.
Yeah, because then your mind keeps waiting for the one detail that proves it isn't.
And that eye-ring description is nasty. That's one of those little details that makes the whole thing cling.
In the second half, we're going deeper into what this thing may have been, why the case spread the way it did, and why Brassknocker Hill still feels like one of those modern legends that maybe started with something all too real. Juniper, Chris, over to you.
The sheep knew before the people did, long before anyone saw a shape on the hill. The fields had already gone afraid.
All right, so far we've got torn bark, spooked animals, silent woods, and one very strange thing seen on a dark road. Somewhere out there, I know listeners are probably asking the same question we are. What in the world was moving around those hills? Chris, take it away.
Thanks, June. And yeah, this one has that creeping quality I really love, because it starts small, then suddenly the whole countryside feels off. While you're with us tonight, make sure you like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. It really does help feed the algorithms. Follow us on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Rumble. And you can also find us across all the major podcast directories. Head over to shadowfrequencypodcast.com for all episodes, the companion blog, merch, show notes, and links to every platform we're on. You can also support the show by buying us a coffee there. And if you want to reach out, send us an email or a voice message through the site. Yours might end up on a future episode. All right, June, back to the shadows.
All right, time to fire up the spectral cosmic message materializer, flipping the switches. Let's see what the static coughs up tonight. Ah, there we are, a folded little whisper caught between frequencies.
Message retrieved from the void.
Let's ease this one open and see who wandered in from the dark. All right, cool. This one comes from Howard in Nevada, and he writes, I just wanted to say I've been listening on Amazon Music during my evening walks out here in Nevada. Usually right when the sun drops behind the hills and the sidewalks start going quiet. That's become my shadow frequency time. There's something about walking through that desert dust while you all talk about cryptids, ancient mysteries, and UFOs. It fits. I found the show a few months back, and I've been making my way through the episodes ever since. Thanks for making the strange stuff feel like late-night conversation with friends. Keep the trail weird, Howard. Howard, that is great listening setup right there. Evening walk, desert air, strange stories in your ears. That feels very on brand for this show. We appreciate you listening, and for anybody else out there who wants to send us a note, the email again is shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. And now let's turn it back over to Chris for a little shadow news.
Thanks, June. And Howard, that's a good image right there. Walking out through Nevada at dusk with this kind of story in your headphones feels like asking for trouble in the best possible way. The search for one of history's most legendary lost relics may be heading back beneath Jerusalem. Archaeologist Dr. Chris McKinney is reportedly preparing a new effort to investigate whether the Ark of the Covenant could be hidden below the Temple Mount. The golden chest long linked to the Ten Commandments, was never listed among the treasures taken when Babylon destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BCE, fueling speculation that it was hidden away. McKinney's team hopes to use muon tomography to scan for underground voids, though getting permission to search the site remains a major hurdle. June, I'll send it back to you.
That is exactly the kind of story that sounds impossible right up until somebody finds a corridor where no corridor should be. All right, let's get back to Brassknocker Hill and whatever may have been moving through those trees. Matt, bring us in.
Something was moving out there where the lane met the dark. You could not always see it, but the silence around it told you exactly where it had been.
Thanks, June. And Howard, that email was perfect for this episode because this really is a walking at dusk kind of case. And Chris, that ARC story is a good reminder that the world is full of places people are convinced have something hidden just beneath the surface. Brassknocker Hill works the same way, just on a smaller and much more local scale. What began as a disturbance at one property quickly picked up that contagious energy these cases get when nobody can settle the basics. The beast didn't arrive with a neat description. It arrived as a series of bad signs. Trees marked in a way that felt wrong, livestock reacting, the woods going strangely still, and then that road encounter near Moncton Combe. Later coverage treated it as one entry in Britain's long line of mystery beast stories, which matters because once a case gets folded into a wider tradition, it stops being just an event and starts becoming a pattern people are ready to believe they're seeing again. And I've got another item from the file here. It's a simple printed map of the area, nothing fancy, just enough to show the lay of it. Brassknocker Hill up on Claverton Down, Moncton Combe below, Bath not far off. When you look at it that way, you can see why this didn't need many sightings to become memorable. It's close enough to civilization to feel immediate, but tucked enough into hill country and wooded margins to keep its blind spots. There's a reason old stories cling to roads like that. A driver catches one glimpse in bad light, now everybody knows where it happened. A couple living on the slope finds damage they can't explain, and suddenly the geography itself starts carrying the story. Even the summit detail adds something eerie to it for me. Brassknocker Hill wasn't just a random patch of ground, it was a high place on Claverton Down, a place already marked on the local landscape long before the beast story arrived. Now, I do want to give you one grounded possibility here, just one, because it hangs over the case whether we like it or not, an escaped exotic animal. The later summary in The Independent even notes that the white eye rings made the witness's description sound like a speckled bear, and that paper places Brassknocker Hill in the broader British tradition of mystery beast and alien big cat reports that kept surfacing through the 20th century. That is a real possibility worth chewing on. Britain has had all kinds of odd animal reports tied to private collections, illegal ownership, and plain old misidentification and poor light. But here's the thing, that explanation only works cleanly if the rest of the case settles down around it, and Brassknocker Hill never really does. The animal was never identified. No one produced the creature. No tidy answer came walking out of those woods with a collar on. So yeah, maybe there was a very strange but ordinary beast at the heart of it, but the fear it created still outgrew the explanation. Because once fear gets established, witnesses don't only report what they see, they report what the place feels like. And that's where Brassknocker Hill survives, not as a perfect zoological puzzle, but as a near-perfect folklore machine. The details are just strong enough to anchor it. Summer, 1979, the Harpers, the stripped oak, the frightened goat, 50 trees by August, the silent wood, the Moncton Combe sighting, the pale rings around the eyes, and then the maddening fact that the beast was never pinned down. That last part is everything. If someone had found an escaped zoo animal the next day, this would be a curious local footnote. Instead, it lingers in that special category of cases that remain unfinished. And unfinished stories are the ones people keep telling, especially when the setting already sounds like it belongs in a tale whispered after midnight. So what do I think? I think something happened on Brassknocker Hill. Maybe not something supernatural, Maybe not some undiscovered species, but something happened strongly enough that people felt the countryside had shifted around them. And that honestly may be the most unsettling possibility of all, because folklore doesn't always rise out of nothing. Sometimes it rises out of one real disturbance, badly seen, imperfectly understood, and shared from person to person until the story develops a pulse of its own. That's why this case lasts, not because the evidence is overwhelming, but because it isn't. It leaves room for the witness, room for the memory, room for imagination, room for the possibility that on one stretch of Somerset hillside in the summer of 1979, a community looked into the dark and saw just enough to know they did not want to follow it any farther. And somewhere in that gap between explanation and dread, the Beast of Brassknocker Hill is probably still walking. Some creatures are terrifying because you can prove they were there. Others are worse because you never can.
Yeah, and this one feels like it fed on uncertainty. The less anyone knew, the larger it got.
Which is probably why I don't love the phrase silent woods anymore.
And that's the hook, isn't it? Whether it was a beast, escapee, or something people built out of fear and fragments, Brassknocker Hill stopped being ordinary for the people who lived through it. Juniper, let's close the file.
By the time the dog started barking, it was already too close. Whatever haunted Brassknocker Hill did not need to be seen to be felt.
That is tonight's case, the Beast of Brassknocker Hill, a strange little modern legend from the hills outside Bath where damaged trees, frightened animals, and one deeply unsettling sighting turned an ordinary stretch of countryside into something people remembered with a chill. Thanks for joining us in the dark tonight. You can always reach us at shadowpodcast@protonmail.com, and you can find their website, shadowfrequencypodcast.com, for our episode, show notes, companion blog, merchandise, and more. You guys want to say goodnight?
Absolutely. Thanks for spending part of your night with us, and wherever you are, if the woods go quiet all at once, maybe don't be in a hurry to find out why.
Good night. Keep your eyes on the hedgerows and your imagination on a short leash. At least until morning.
Good night from all of us here at the Shadow Frequency. Sleep tight, keep listening, and if something out there seems to notice you first, leave the path behind.
This episode was conjured with a solemn vow to explore the unexplained while remaining bound to the truths that have been unearthed. All interpretations are speculative and offered only for your enlightenment and your entertainment.